Prior to me joining the organisation, the business was spending a significant amount of money on attracting candidates through various methods, largely recruitment agencies. And the sell was a commercial one for us. It was, if we deliver the appropriate level of career site and attract these candidates independently of all of the other methods that we used previously, this is effectively what we'll save as an organisation. So we've gone from spending in the millions on attracting candidates down to less than $500,000 a year on attracting candidates. We don't spend anything on job boards at all any longer. We very rarely use a recruitment agency. That's not to say we won't, but it's on occasions where we've got a very, very niche or difficult to fill role. So the argument internally was, the first starting point for me was the commercial one, and then all the other stuff that is the flexibility, the ability to change what you want and how you want to build the story, etc., came after that. Because once you've got the people who are looking after the numbers convinced, the rest of the story was relatively easy.
Rebecca, what about you?
Similar, so there were two key drivers for us. One was around the ability to give the different businesses and brands their own identity, so that was quite a quick win. But then it was around the financials. So again, we wanted to create a destination site for colleagues. So rather than look at what we were doing on LinkedIn or look at what we were doing through some of the other social channels, they came to one place, and then we had that candidate data, and we were able to identify what roles were appropriate and start pushing those back out. So they were probably the two key things for us.
No.
I think it's important to understand what your agenda is, because you'll hear from your colleagues across the different HR departments and in other departments that developing this system will allow them to do things quicker, easier, capture more information, etc., etc., etc. But it's easy to then lose sight of what the candidate experience at the front end looks like. If you make it difficult for somebody to apply, as demonstrated earlier with the Vodafone experience, you will lose people to the detriment of being able to save time at some point in the future because you've captured somebody's national insurance number or other kind of information that's not probably relevant for an application but will be relevant for an employee at some point in the future. It's easy to fall into the trap of building an HR information system that is loaded by your application process, and that's not the right thing to do. You should always make sure that you've got the candidate experience in mind over and above the potential employee experience. You can always capture that information at some point later, but you'll never capture it if they get halfway through the process and abandon. So think carefully about, yes, you want to be able to create economies of scale and cost efficiencies and savings through having an applicant tracking system that's probably associated with a HR information system, but just be mindful of what information you're asking.
Identify who the people within the business are that can help you. So quite often that's marketing teams, finance teams, depending on what you're trying to pull. And then find someone else with a passion for that who can make it happen. So I've got two people in my team, one who looks after the system, so any challenges around ATS and technical stuff, he's brilliant at. Another who is a recruiter. He loves recruiting, he never wants to leave that, but he's got an absolute passion for candidate engagement, social media, and he's the person that can ask the question and link the dots and then make those things happen. He doesn't necessarily write the content, but he just helps facilitate that. And I think if you've got someone who's got that passion to do it, then that helps. And then we've tried to be mindful in terms of how we're selling that story out to candidates. So what is the content that we're serving up? So one of our first pieces of blog content was finance. We have challenges recruiting in finance. We're based in Northampton, not the epicentre of the world. So trying to find people who want to work in Northampton and actually understand the opportunities within finance in a typical builder's merchants is a real challenge. So our FD brilliantly engaged with us, helped us pull an article together, and then we just popped a link at the bottom linking to all the finance roles across the business. So it became quite a nice little narrative. And then I think as well, just monitoring how many views you get and how long people spend time reading that. So if they're spending a couple of minutes on the page, none of our content is particularly time intensive because they're little snapshots, then you can kind of judge whether it's engaging and it's serving up the right purpose.
Yeah.
It's helped us because it's enabled us to be able to tell the story of what it's like to work for us. So yes, we're a power organisation. So the product itself is not particularly interesting. It's it's a light switch. It works or it doesn't work. It's not iPhones. It's not new tech. But what we are is a great organisation to work for, and we offer lots of benefits, lots of real positives to want to come and work for our organisation that you wouldn't necessarily understand unless you would hear somebody who works for the organisation talk about it. So we've been out and around the organisation talking to folks, putting an iPhone in their face and asking them why they work here and what makes them stay here effectively. And that gives you a real compelling message to be able to share with people as to what it's actually like to work here. So it's really useful for you to be able to offer authentic content. I think that's the key thing. I mean, I could sit and write information for people to read. We could ask our marketing team to sit and write information to read. It's far more important that you ask the people who are in the organisation to describe why they're here. And that is then a real compelling message for two reasons for me. If you're a candidate that has got a real interest in working for the organisation, is it going to be for me? And the reverse of that, is it not for me? Because if it's not for me, then we wouldn't necessarily want to engage with you. But you can make that decision. You can make that decision based on the content that we're sharing with you.
It's never going to be easy. I think if anyone goes into it or tells you that they've had a really easy journey, I'd possibly challenge the product that they've got out of it. Always build in contingency time, because if you need to get things signed off by people around the business, that can be a real frustration. I think you have to go into it with a sense of realism, that it will take you longer. I think also accept that you don't have to be perfect at launch date, which is something that we really struggled with, because we knew our vision, but then launched with probably about 80% of the content that we knew we wanted, because we knew then that it was a significant step forward in terms of both what we were serving up for a candidate experience and what we'd get back from applications, and then allow the other things to happen. So yeah, I think go into it with your eyes wide open, build in a shed load of contingency time, because you absolutely will need it. And just be prepared for frustrations, and have a real clear project plan as well, because it's very easy, alongside everything else that you're doing, to let things drift.
I think you've got to continue to keep going back to it and continue reviewing what content's on there. How relevant is it now? What kind of content are you sharing? It's okay to archive some of this stuff because it will be useful for you again in the future, but you've got to continue to keep adding to it. So I think for me, you've got to have enough content to the hygiene factor. Can you reply easily? And the second thing you need to consider is, are you giving people enough information to make a decision? If you've ticked those two boxes, then go live, but then continue to add to it to enhance that.
We encourage anyone that wants to tell their story, and then we give them a bit of a template with some help from format around what that, how they construct that, so we can either use the full piece or just a snapshot of that. And we've got a couple on there where people have talked about real challenges, or I didn't think I was good enough, but then have seen a success, because then you can share that back with the business, and then they push it out through their social channels as well. And I think anything that you do in terms of content has to be real and authentic, because it will give a sense of what your employer brand is. So being a group organisation, we can't have an employer brand because we've got so many different identities, but we can really share a sense of what does it feel like to belong to the organisation. And if you get that right, that enables people to be drawn to you or be pushed away if they don't feel that it's relevant. But whatever you put out has to be real, has to be authentic, and has to be truthful, because if it's not, there's more damage than not putting out anything at all. There was a large organisation last year who did a brilliant piece of candidate engagement. It got quite a lot of traction on social media, where they painted this picture of this organisation. It was amazing, it was great, and it went like wildfire around my team, around, look at amazing, we should be doing this. And then you got to the point of clicking to apply, and I can't remember if it was Taleo, but suddenly the experience completely negated the whole journey up until that point. So I think as long as you've got truthful, compelling stories, and you can see the narrative and it threads all the way through, then and then you're able to share that and encourage your colleagues to share it, then that's the best advocacy that you can get.
We started doing something last year where we began to video managers talking about the job profile rather than an advert, so that we could share that job profile online. So folk that consume content that is video rather than read content, and the uptake was phenomenal, and the applications, and the relevant applications then become more apparent. So yes, is the short answer to your question. Encourage people to do it, and the more you encourage people to do it, the more people will do it. But start with the easy doors to open. So go and talk to your digital team who get it and understand why you want to do it, because we did something a fortnight ago. And we started at the start of the day with 2 or 3 folk appeared. The next thing, there is a queue of people waiting to share, and DJ was just about to pack up and so I'm off, and 3 more people arrive. So it doesn't take long for a word to get around the office that somebody's doing something interesting and people want to be involved in it. The type of folk that are going to engage in video content typically will be, what we would describe in Empower as the digital natives. So we're going to consume that content, get it, understand it, and then do something about it. I don't think we'd necessarily then use the same for a finance manager, an example, because I am generalising obviously, but typically they like to consume content in a different way. So it's not always about we've just got to get loads and loads of videos, and that works for us in certain areas. But equally, the written content in the markets where that type, generally that type of individual consumes information in that way also works for us as well. So. It's about mixing it really. It's about understanding who you're aiming at and what type of content they'll consume and how they consume it.